In combat sports, we expect a code, honor after the war, a handshake, a nod of respect. But not everyone plays nice. Some fighters take the win and turn it into a spectacle of straight-up disrespect. These are the fighters who didn't just beat their opponents, they embarrassed them. From spit-slinging to mic-dropping mayhem, this list is wild. Smash that like button, hit subscribe for more raw fight content, and let's start with a Brit who made sure his win left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. UFC 127. Michael Bisping versus Jorge Rivera. After weeks of Rivera mocking Bisping in satirical videos, calling him pillow fists and mocking his accent,
latching on to hating Michael Bisping. People don't really know Michael Bisping until you meet Michael Bisping.
Tensions exploded in the cage. Bisping landed a questionable knee while Rivera was grounded. No disqualification, just a warning. But the moment the fight ended, Bisping taunted a dazed Rivera, leaned over the cage, and spit at Rivera's corner, hitting his boxing coach. He was fined $20,000 by the UFC, and the MMA world lit up. Some saw fire, others saw filth. And just like that, Bisping became more than just a heel. He became a villain with venom. But if you think spitting was bad, wait till you see what happens when Colby Covington steps into enemy territory. At UFC Fight Night 119 in Sao Paulo, Brazil, Colby Covington delivered a dominant performance against jiu-jitsu legend Demian Maia, controlling the fight over 3 grueling, bloody rounds. Despite Covington's clear victory, the Brazilian crowd vocally expressed their displeasure, booing loudly throughout the event. The atmosphere was charged with tension. The crowd boos. The air is electric. Colby grabs the mic and detonates a bomb.
Brazil, you're a dog! All you filthy animals suck!
Trash literally flew into the octagon. Security had to rush him out before the fans did it themselves. This wasn't just a post-fight insult. It was a career pivot. Covington went from overlooked contender to full-blown chaos. He even wore a red MAGA hat on the plane home. Hate sells. And Colby, he sold out arenas. But if you thought that was inflammatory, let's talk about the guy who turned a post-fight interview into a racial firestorm. Adrian Broner had just cruised to victory over Carlos Molina on the undercard of Mayweather versus Maidana. But instead of letting the win speak for itself, he grabbed the mic on live TV and said,
"Adrian, the problem, brother. The can man. Anybody can get it. Africans, I just beat the fuck out of a Mexican." No, come on.
The crowd froze. The boxing world exploded. Golden Boy Promotions instantly distanced themselves, and the WBC slapped Broner with a temporary ban from title fights, unless he apologized. He didn't. He laughed it off. That's just Broner being Broner. But fans didn't forget. The win was buried under a wave of backlash. In one sentence, Broner turned a solid performance into a PR disaster and showed just how far ego can push a fighter past the line of respect. And speaking of ego, that brings us to Stockton's finest, a guy more famous for flipping double birds than shaking hands. UFC 141, Nate Diaz versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. It wasn't a fight, it was a clinic. Diaz landed significant strikes, breaking Cerrone's rhythm. But the real show? Diaz taunting Cerrone mid-fight, flipping him off, talking trash, walking forward like he couldn't feel pain. When the final horn sounded, there was no glove tap, no fist bump, just middle fingers raised high as Diaz strutted across the cage. It wasn't disrespect out of nowhere. Cowboy had kicked Nate's leg during the weigh-in, but Diaz made sure the revenge was loud and personal. Of course, disrespect comes in many forms.
Or not.
Sometimes, it's not what you say, it's when you hit. And that brings us to Floyd. 2011, Floyd Mayweather versus Victor Ortiz. Round 4. Ortiz, frustrated, throws an intentional headbutt. The ref separates them. Ortiz apologizes, hugs him, kisses him, and then, bam, bam. Floyd clocks him with a left hook and a straight right. Ortiz is out cold. The crowd loses it. Technically legal. Ethically? That's another story. Floyd's explanation?
And it's protect yourself at all times.
But in the post-fight interview, he doubled down, screaming at Larry Merchant, who famously replied,
You're not shit.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
You won't do
the
shit.
whole night turned into chaos. And just when fans thought sportsmanship couldn't go lower, Ronda Rousey showed them how to walk away cold. UFC 168. Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate 2. The rematch had heat. Rousey locked in her signature armbar in the third round. Tate tapped. But instead of showing the usual sportsmanship, Rousey looked down at her rival's outstretched hand and walked away. The crowd booed their queen. Rogan asked about it post-fight.
Give us your thoughts on it.
Just wanted to insult my family. I can't shake her hand, but I really respect.
Tate had insulted her family and teammates, and there was no forgiveness. That cold shoulder went viral. And if silence can be disrespectful, Brock Lesnar showed us how volume can crank it to 11. Brock Lesnar just smashed Frank Mir with a savage TKO. Revenge for Mir's earlier win. But Brock wasn't done. On the mic, he roasted Bud Light.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Then, he flips off the booing fans.
That's not going to win him any fans.
And to finish,
I'm gonna sit down with my friends and family. And hell, I might even get on top of my wife tonight. See y'all later.
yup, WWE's Sable. Dana White nearly popped a vein. Sponsors called. The UFC had to walk back the comments fast. Lesnar apologized later, but everyone knew that was just damage control. And speaking of post-fight humiliation, nobody did it nastier than Izzy. At UFC 253, Israel Adesanya faced Paulo Costa. Costa came in undefeated, talking trash and mocking Izzy's fighting style. Adesanya made him pay, destroying him with precision kicks and punches. Costa dropped. Fight over. Fans were shocked by the dominant performance. Dana White said nothing. Costa's camp called the fight a tough loss. Adesanya said Costa disrespected him first, so this was personal. Love it or hate it, that moment burned into MMA history. And it proved, in the cage, respect isn't always mutual. Some fighters bow, others flip the bird, spit, or taunt, while their opponent's still bleeding. Respect in the fight game? It's not guaranteed. So, who was the worst? Who went too far? And who just gave us unforgettable theater? Drop your take in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more savage fight stories. Stay sharp, and we'll see you in the next round.